At my uncle's retirement party, the celebration of a man my family called a saint, my grandmother stood up and said, in front of 80 guests, "This family has been through a lot, and some wounds don't heal. But we're together tonight to honor a good man, despite the lies that were told about him." She looked at me when she said lies. 80 people followed her gaze. And I stood up and I said, "Since we're finally talking about it in the open, I'd like to say something. And so, I think, would some other people in this room." And 3 women I had never met stood up with me. Let me back up. Because to understand why 3 strangers rose from their chairs at a retirement party, you have to understand the 8 years I spent as the family liar, and the thing I told the truth about, and the man they chose over me. My name is Sophia Reyes. I'm 31 years old. And when I was 23, I told my family something true about my uncle, and they decided it was a lie, and they cast me out for it. It took 8 years, and 3 other women for the truth to finally stand up in a room full of people who'd spent nearly a decade calling me a liar. I'm going to tell this carefully because it's a heavy story, and because the details that matter are not the ones you might expect. This is not a story about what my uncle did. I'm not going to describe that, and you don't need it described. This is a story about what a family does when someone they love is accused by someone they love, and they'd rather sacrifice the accuser than doubt the accused. It's a story about being disbelieved. That's the wound this is about, the disbelief. Let me tell you about my uncle, Raphael. In my family, Raphael was the golden one, not a golden child, but a golden man, the successful brother, the charming one, the one who'd done well and lifted the family's standing, the one everyone deferred to and admired. He was warm in public, generous in visible ways, the uncle who gave the best gifts and told the best stories and made everyone laugh at holidays. My grandmother worshipped him. He was her favorite, her pride. The whole family arranged itself around Raphael's specialness. The way families do around a person they've decided is the best of them. And Raphael was not what he appeared to be. I learned that in the way these things are learned, privately, painfully, over time, in the space that a trusted uncle has with a young relative. I'm not going to say more than that. What matters for the story is that, when I was 23, I found the courage to tell my family the truth about him. Not to the police, not at first, to my family, because I was young and frightened and I genuinely thought, that the people who loved me would believe me and protect me. I was wrong, and the wrongness of it reshaped my entire life. Because here is what happened when I told the truth. My family had a choice to make, and it was, for them, an unbearable one. On one side was me, a 23-year-old, one of the younger members, not especially important in the family's hierarchy. On the other side was Raphael, the golden man, the pride, my grandmother's favorite, the pillar around whom the whole family's sense of itself was organized. To believe me, they would have to unknow everything they believed about Raphael. They would have to accept that the best of them was the worst of them. They would have to grieve and rage and confront a horror at the center of their own family. Or they could decide I was lying. They decided I was lying. It was easier. It was so much easier. To disbelieve one young woman is a small thing. To unknow a beloved man is a catastrophe. My family chose the small thing. Raphael, of course, denied everything smoothly, woundedly, with the wateriness of a good man falsely accused, because he was charming and practiced and I was shaking and young. And Raphael did something clever, the thing abusers do. He got ahead of it. He told the family, tearfully, that I was troubled, that I was seeking attention, that I had always been a difficult girl, that he forgave me, but that the family should be careful of my instability. He turned my truth into evidence of my brokenness. And the family, desperate for a version of events that let them keep their golden man, seized it gratefully. My grandmother led the charge. Raphael was her heart, and she would not, allow him to be what I said he was. And so she declared, with the full authority of the matriarch, that I had lied, that I had told a terrible, unforgivable lie about a good man, and that until I recanted and apologized, I was not welcome. I would not recant. I could not. To recant would be to call the truth a lie, and I had already lost everything for telling it. I would not also surrender the one thing that was still mine, which was that it had happened. So I didn't apologize, and I was cast out. Let me tell you what being cast out actually means, because people imagine a dramatic banishment, and it's nothing so clean. It's a slow suffocation. It's not being invited. It's the family group chat you're removed from. It's holidays that happen without you, that you find out about afterward in photos. It's your grandmother's birthday, your cousin's weddings, funerals, your own family's funerals, that you learn about too late or aren't welcome at. It's being spoken of, when you're spoken of at all, as the one who told the terrible lie, the cautionary tale, the troubled girl who tried to destroy a good man. For 8 years, that was my name in my own family, the liar. And I want to describe what that does to a person, because the abuse was one wound and this was another. And honestly, the second was in some ways worse, because the first was a monster, and the second was everyone I loved. Tell the truth about the worst thing that ever happened to you, and to have the people who are supposed to protect you respond by casting you out as a liar. That is a specific devastation that reorganizes your relationship with reality. I began to doubt myself. Not the facts, I always knew the facts, but everything else. My worth, my place in the world, whether love was real if the people who'd claimed to love me could do this, whether I was, as they insisted, actually the problem. 8 years of an entire family telling you that your truth is a lie will make you a stranger to yourself. I got through it. I want to say that clearly, for anyone who needs to hear it. I got through it. I went to therapy, good therapy, for years. I built a life outside my family, with chosen people, friends who became family, who believed me instantly and completely and were enraged on my behalf in the way my blood never was. I built a career. I found, slowly, a footing. But I carried the exile like a stone, and under the stone was a question I couldn't answer and couldn't stop asking. Would the truth ever come out? Would I die as the family liar? Was there any version of the future in which I was believed? For a long time, the answer seemed to be no. Because here is the cruel mathematics of what Raphael did. He'd isolated my truth. It was my word against his, and the family had chosen his, and there was no proof. And the thing about this particular kind of harm is that it's designed to happen without witnesses. I had nothing but my own account, and my own account had been ruled a lie by the only court that mattered to me, which was my family. I thought I might carry it unproven forever, but abusers are rarely singular. That's the thing I didn't know at 23, the thing that would eventually change everything. A man like Raphael does not do what he did once to one person. The isolation of each victim is his method, but it's also his vulnerability because there is never just one. And time, which erodes so much, also accumulates. Over the years, quietly, unknown to me, the number grew. Here is how the truth began to surface. About 2 years before the retirement party, I got a message from a woman I'd never met. Her name was Camilla, and she was a distant connection, a friend of a cousin, someone at the far edge of my family's orbit. And her message was careful and frightened, and it said, essentially, I think something happened to you years ago that no one believed. Something similar happened to me. I've been afraid to say anything. But I found out you exist, and I need you to know you're not the only one, and you weren't lying. I cannot describe what it is to receive that message after 8 years. Have one other human being on Earth say, I believe you because it happened to me too. I wept for a day, and then Camilla and I talked, and carefully over months we found that there were others. Raphael's isolation of his victims had kept us apart, but the world is smaller than an abuser hopes, and connections that shouldn't have formed. There were, we eventually understood, at least 4 of us. 4 women across years with the same story about the same golden man. And each of us had been alone. And each of us, learning we were not alone, became something we hadn't been able to be by ourselves. Credible, undeniable, a pattern. Because here is what one voice cannot do and 4 voices can. One woman's truth can be called a lie. 4 women's identical truth, arrived at independently, without collusion, spanning years, is not a lie anyone can dismiss. Raphael had spent his life relying on the fact that each of us was isolated and disbelievable alone. He had never imagined we would find each other. Let me tell you what we did, because we did it carefully. We did not go straight to the family. We'd all learned, in our different ways, what happens when you hand a hard truth to people invested in a lie. Instead, we did it properly. We documented. Each of us wrote down our account, dated, detailed. We found what corroboration existed, and it existed, in fragments, across our separate lives. Things we told friends or therapists years earlier, contemporaneous records of our distress, the small evidences that accumulate around a truth, even when the central act has no witness. Camilla, it turned out, had kept things. Another of the women had told a counselor years before, and there was a record. The pattern assembled was formidable. We consulted people who knew what to do with it, a lawyer and an advocate who worked with survivors, who helped us understand our options, which included, for some of the more recent accounts, real legal avenues. I want to be careful here. This became, in part, a legal matter handled by professionals in the ways such things should be handled. But the legal process is not the part of this story I'm telling. The part I'm telling is what happened in the room. Because the 4 of us made a decision together. We could handle this entirely privately, through lawyers and authorities, and never face the family that had cast me out. That was the safe path, and no one would have blamed us for taking it. But I had spent 8 years as the family liar, exiled and disbelieved, and the other women had spent their own years isolated and afraid, and we decided that some part of this reckoning needed to happen in the open, in front of the family that had chosen Raphael, so that the choice they'd made could finally be seen for what it was. Not for revenge, for the record, for the 8 years, for every young woman in that family who might someday need to know that the truth, even a truth about a golden man, can be believed. The retirement party gave us the room. Raphael was retiring, a big event, a celebration of his career, the family's golden man honored at the peak of his respectability. 80 guests. And I was astonishingly invited, because after 8 years, my grandmother had begun, in her age, to make gestures toward healing the family, which meant she wanted me to come and be quietly, permanently, the forgiven liar, present but penitent, at the celebration of the man I'd lied about. It was the ultimate expression of the exile. Come back, on the condition that you accept forever that you were the one who was wrong. I accepted the invitation. And I told the other 3 women, and we made our plan, and they came too, as my guests, unremarked. 3 women no one in my family knew, seated quietly among the 80. I almost couldn't do it. I want to be honest about that. Walking into that room, the room full of the family that had called me a liar for 8 years, to celebrate the man who'd made them do it. Every cell in my body wanted to run. But Camilla caught my eye across the room, and the other 2 women were there, and I was not alone. For the first time in this, I was not alone, and that made it possible. My grandmother rose to give her toast. She said the thing she'd clearly been wanting to say for 8 years, the thing that was meant to close the book. That the family had been through a lot, that some wounds don't heal. That they were together to honor a good man, despite the lies that were told about him. And she looked at me, and 80 people followed her gaze to the family liar, come home at last to be honored by her presence at the golden man's party. And I stood up. Since we're finally talking about it in the open, I said, and my voice did not shake, which surprised me, I'd like to say something, and so I think would some other people in this room. And Camilla stood, and then the second woman. And then the third. 4 of us, standing in a room of 80, and the confusion on the family's faces beginning to curdle into something else as they registered that these were strangers, and that the strangers were standing with the liar. 8 years ago, I said, I told this family the truth about Raphael, And you decide it was a lie because believing me was harder than keeping him. I've been the family liar ever since. Tonight I want you to meet Camilla and Anna and Lucia. None of them are related to us. None of them knew me until 2 years ago. And each of them, independently across different years, has the same account of the same man that I do. 4 women who never met, who could not have colluded with one story. You called it a lie when it was one woman. I'd like to know what you call it now that it's 4. The room was silent in a way I had waited 8 years to hear. We're not here to make a scene at a party, I continued. This is being handled properly by lawyers, by the right people in the right ways, for those of us whose accounts the law can still reach. That's already underway. That's not what tonight is about. Tonight is about the record. Because for 8 years, this family looked at a frightened young woman and chose a comfortable lie, and I needed you to have to look at the truth with your own eyes, all of you, at once, in the open. You chose him over me because it was easier. I want you to sit with how easy it was, and I want every young person in this family to see, tonight, that the truth doesn't disappear just because it's inconvenient to the people who are supposed to protect you. Sometimes it takes 8 years. Sometimes it takes 4 voices instead of 1, but it stands up. Eventually it stands up. And we sat down, the 4 of us, together. Here's how it ended. Raphael's carefully built respectability did not survive that room, and it did not survive what came after. Because what came after was the proper process we'd already set in motion. The legal reckoning handled by professionals that a pattern of 4 credible accounts makes possible, where one isolated account is not. I'm not going to detail it, because it's not mine alone to detail, and because the process deserves its privacy. I'll say only that Raphael's retirement was not the peaceful sunset he'd planned, that consequences came, real ones, and that the golden man's shine did not survive contact with 4 women who had finally found each other. The family shattered, as it had to. You cannot survive as a family, the revelation that you exiled a truth teller to protect a predator. Some of you have to break. My grandmother, this is the hardest part, never fully accepted it. She was too old, and Raphael was too deep in her heart, and to believe 4 women she would have had to unknow a lifetime of loving him, and she could not do it. She retreated into wounded, diminished denial, and died, 2 years later, without ever telling me she was sorry. That is a wound I carry and will carry, that the woman whose belief I most needed went to her grave still, in some corner of herself, calling me a liar. Not every story gets the apology it deserves. Mine didn't get that one, but others in the family did the harder, better thing. My aunt, Raphael's own sister, came to me devastated and said the words, "We failed you, I failed you. You were a child, and you told the truth, and we threw you away to keep him comfortable, and I will be ashamed of that until I die." Some of my cousins, who'd grown up on the story that I was the liar, had to rebuild their entire understanding of their childhoods, and some of them did and came to me, and we began, slowly, the work of becoming family again on honest ground. Exile ended, not cleanly, not completely, but really. I was believed. After 8 years in my own family, I was believed. And the 4 of us, Camilla, Anna, Lucia, and me, are bonded now in a way that's hard to explain to anyone who hasn't been disbelieved about the most important truth of their life. We are each other's proof. We are each other's family, in the deepest sense. The isolation that Raphael relied on, that nearly destroyed each of us alone, became, when we found each other, the very thing that undid him. He made us alone. And then we weren't, and that was the end of him. For 8 years, my family called me a liar to protect a man they'd rather believe in than examine. I could not make them believe me alone. One voice against a golden man is a voice they can afford to disbelieve. But truth, it turns out, is not as isolated as an abuser needs it to be. Somewhere out there, while I was carrying my exile, other women were carrying theirs, and the world was quietly, slowly, moving us toward each other. And when we finally stood up together, 4 women, one story, in a room that had spent 8 years insisting there was no story at all, the lie that had cost me my family simply could not stay standing. It takes so much to tell the truth once. It took me 8 years and 3 strangers to be believed, but I was believed. In the end, I was believed. And if you're somewhere carrying a truth that no one will believe, alone, called a liar by the people who should have protected you, I need you to hear the one thing my 8 years taught me. You're almost never as alone as they've made you feel. Somewhere there is someone else, and the truth, even the hardest truth, even the truth about the golden man everyone loves, it stands up. Eventually it stands up. You just sometimes have to wait for the others to find you, and then you stand up together.